everyone. So we're going to be reading chapter 6 from your Unit 3 readers today, so you can follow along with me if you'd like, if you have it at home, which everybody should have the paper copy at home. But if you just want to look on the screen, that works too, whatever is easiest for you. Before we start reading, I'm going to go over a couple of vocabulary words, and if I know the paper copies of your readers probably don't have the glossary, but if they do, you can always look in there. Remember, the glossary is a text feature, and it helps us figure out what the definition of words are, right? And it's in the back of the book. So all of these vocabulary words are going to be in bold print when we see them in the story, and we can look in the back of the book in the glossary to figure out what they mean, right? Okay, so our first vocabulary word is the cerebellum, and it is a part of the brain located under the cerebrum, divided into two halves. It helps with voluntary movement of muscle groups and balance. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It's divided into two halves. It sits on tops of the cerebellum and controls thoughts, emotions, and all the senses. Hemisphere is one half of a round object, kind of like we talked about in class. Paralyzed means unable to act, move, or feel a part or parts of the body. Hollow is empty inside. A concussion is a brain injury. The medulla is the brainstem, and the cerebral cortex is the gray matter of the cerebrum that processes sensory information and controls muscle function. Okay, so we're going to be starting right at the top of in chapter 6. So the name of our chapter is, or the title of our chapter is The Spinal Cord and Brain. All right, so it says, you've got a lot of nerves. You do. You have nerves in your fingers. You have nerves in your toes. There are nerves all over your body. But there are two parts of your body that are especially important for your nervous system. One is the spinal cord. The other is the brain. And then over here is our picture, our photo and caption. Another text feature says, your brain, spinal cord, and nerves. And it's showing you where they're located, right? So make sure you're also filling out page 8.1 in your Unit 3 workbooks. I forgot to say that. You guys all should have taken them home tonight. If not, if you have been remote or we are remote, make sure you're pausing me, getting out page 8.1 in your Unit 3 workbooks. And you need to be filling in those blanks as I'm saying them. And you're going to hear me say them all throughout this chapter. So make sure you're filling out those words. And then at the bottom, you're going to look and see which letters are underlined. And you're going to be able to spell the answer to the what does the brain send out to the rest of the body in that box at the bottom. All right, so we're going to go move on to the next page. I told you a little about the spinal cord earlier when we were looking at this skeletal system. I told you that the bones that make up your spine, the vertebrae, are there to protect your spinal cord. The vertebrae are hollow and long strings of nerves run through the hollow parts of the bones. The nerves that make up the spinal cord run all the way up your back and neck. They end up in the brain. If I were to have a serious accident and damage my spinal cord, I might end up paralyzed, unable to move my legs and or my arms. I might need to use a wheelchair to get around, like the boy in this photograph. You see, the brain uses the spinal cord as a sort of superhighway to send messages out to the rest of the body. If the spinal cord is broken or damaged, the messages can't get through to the arms and legs. So over here, the photo of the boy in the wheelchair, just like they said, and it says, these children have experienced change to their spinal cords, which impacts how they move. All right, we're going to move on to the next page. This spinal cord leads right to the center of your nervous system, your brain. It's the brain that receives messages from the nerves. It's the brain that sends messages out to your muscles. Even though the brain weighs only 2 to 3 pounds, it is the most important organ for life. The brain is protected by the skull. Inside the skull, there are 3 layers of fiber and fluid protecting the brain. So the brain is really well protected, but it can still be harmed. Ask a football player who's had a concussion. Getting a concussion is like bruising the brain. Ouch. And down here it says the human brain. That's what the caption says. You might not be able to see it, but it does. And then on the next page, the photo up here and the caption under it is saying the 3 main parts of the brain, and it's showing you, right? So it's kind of actually a diagram because there's arrows pointing to different parts of the brain, right? So there's a diagram, and under the diagram, there's a caption. Okay, the brain is divided into 3 main parts: the medulla, the cerebellum, and the cerebrum. Each part has its own job to do. The medulla or brainstem is located at the base of the skull in the back, right, where the spinal cord meets the brain. And you can see that in the diagram, it's showing you where it's located. The medulla controls the important involuntary actions of the body, like breathing, heartbeat, and digestion. The cerebellum sits right next to the medulla. It is divided into 2 hemispheres or halves. The cerebellum has several jobs. One of them is to control voluntary movements. That means the cerebellum helps you walk, run, and jump. The 2 hemispheres of the cerebellum control different parts of the body. The right hemisphere controls movement on the left side of the body. The left hemisphere controls movement on the right side. It might seem strange that the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, but that's just the way we're made. So they're saying that even that your right side of your brain is actually controlling things that are happening that you're doing with the left side of your body. And over here we have another diagram. See, there's arrows pointing to different parts of the brain, and that would be a diagram, right? Another text feature that we've been talking about. And it says on the caption under the diagram, it says the hemispheres of the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The third part of the brain is the cerebrum. The cerebrum sits on top of the cerebellum and the medulla. It is the largest part of the brain. Each part of the cerebrum has a certain job to do. For example, the front part, just inside of the forehead, controls emotions. The very back part, just above the brainstem, controls the sense of sight. The sense of touch is controlled by a strip of the brain running over the top of your head from ear to ear. The outside part of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the wrinkly part of the brain that most people think about when they think of it's what most people think about when they think of a brain. People sometimes call this part of the brain the gray matter. Okay, so they're showing you where the cerebrum is up here, and then over here, this is the cerebral cortex. The cerebrum is divided into 2 hemispheres, just like the cerebellum. Until recently, we did not know much about the various parts of the cerebrum, or know much about what the various parts of the cerebrum do. But in the past few decades, we have learned a lot. Scientists now have even more advanced ways than just x-rays to look at and observe different organs in the body, including the brain. They use something called a PET scan to see different parts of the brain work. A scientist may ask the person having the PET scan to do something like talk or blink his eyes or her eyes. When the person performs different actions, different parts of the brain light up on the computer screen. Scientists have learned a lot about what happens where in the brain by looking at a PET scan. As you can see from this image of the brain, some of the things we do take place in the left hemisphere, while others happen in the right hemisphere. So over here, it kind of shows us the things that happen in each hemisphere of the cerebrum. So Your left side of the brain is responsible for analytical thought, logic, language, reasoning, science and math, writing, number skills, and then right hand control. And then your right side of the brain controls art awareness, creativity, imagination, intuition, insight, holistic thinking or holistic thought, music awareness, 3D forms, and left hand control. So it's crazy how many things the different sides of your brain can control. All right. So that's the end of our chapter. If you need to go back and find some of the answers for workbook page 8.1, you can. Remember, you can watch this video as many times as you need to, and you can pause it as many times as you need to also. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And then make sure that you are either sending in a picture of 8.1 to me so I know that you've completed it,